I'm going to keep my comments short. I'll reintroduce to you Mrs. Magda Schaloum. Magda shared with me that she's originally from Hungary, and from there I'm going to let her tell her story, and we will take the time that Magda is willing to stay with us, and you all have questions, and I hope you'll think and be thoughtful of your questions, but first I think we're just going to do some really good listening. I've shared with Magda the work that we're doing as a class, researching the Holocaust, and so at that, I'll turn it over to you, and again, so many thanks for being here.
First of all, I would like to thank the teacher that invited me to speak today. The reason I'm speaking on different schools or organizations, because the memory of my parents and also the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. Also, even today, there are groups who tries to deny that the Holocaust ever happened. And unfortunately, here around this area, Seattle area, we don't have too many survivors of the Holocaust. And I'm thankful to God that I can still speak and somewhat I can remember. And I feel this is my obligation to speak on the Holocaust. I was born in Hungary, and Hungary was always very anti-Semitic country. And as a young child, I was already hated, even though my parents, we lived among non-Jewish people. And I had non-Jewish friends, but then sometimes it came out from them, the hate. It was going on, and I would say that I had a happy childhood because I had a wonderful parents, and I had one sister, one brother. In 1939, when the war started between Poland and Germany, already the German government gave the Hungarian government how to handle the Jewish people, which meant myself. I finished high school, and my hope was and dream was to go and be a kindergarten teacher. I always loved children. But it wasn't possible because we could not enter the college. My sister, in 1939, just finished and became a teacher, and of course she couldn't find any job. Later on, she was lucky that she got a job in a Jewish orphanage, became a teacher, and later on she was a principal in the orphanage in the school. But as I say, life was going on. They already, at that point, they took away a lot of the men and teenage boys and took them away in a forced labor camp. And unfortunately, not too many returned again. But the worst day came in March 19th, 1944, when the German army took over Hungary. Hungary was the last country which they occupied, itself the military, because as I said, everything was done already as the German government told the Hungarian government. So I remember it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and one of the non-Jewish neighbors came in and was very upset and told us the news. I had no idea what will happen until the following day, Monday, I went from my hometown, which was about 60 kilometers from Budapest. And when I arrived in Budapest, then I saw the tragedy. If somebody would have pointed out at me that I'm a Jewish girl, immediately they would drag me away. But it didn't happen. But at that point already, the Germans took over the beautiful stores, and whatever they wanted, they could take out from the stores. The hotels were full with them. But I came to work in the morning, early in the morning, and back at night. By the time I arrived at home, it was 11 o'clock at night, and everything was very difficult, especially for my family, because my mother was a very, very religious Jewish woman, which meant that, I don't know if you know the word kosher, and everything has to be kosher. And because it was kosher, it was very expensive, much more expensive than just, for instance, a regular meat. And my father, he was a locksmith and working for a coal mine. And he worked very hard to make the money and also to educate the children. My sister and myself, my brother was younger. And for my parents was very, very important, the education. So really they sacrificed a lot, and because the high school already was a private school. So then in May 1st, in 1944, we had to sew on our clothes the yellow star. So the morning when I went to the train station, and every morning when we went on the train, we had a group of youngsters and just having a great time until we arrived to Budapest. But when I came on the train with the star on my clothes, I understand, some of them felt scared to be seen with me, but then the faithful ones, they still stayed, and they were my friend. So every morning I would go to work, come back, and every time it was such a danger that if somebody finds out that I'm Jewish, immediately they would take me away. But they said, well, I didn't look Jewish. Okay. So then I had a chance to be hidden in a really small, practically a village, where nobody would know who I was. But because it was already said that the Germans will take us away and we will go somewhere to work. Now, I knew that I cannot leave my mother alone. So therefore, I didn't take advantage of being hidden. Then, one night when I came home, one of the neighbor girls who wasn't Jewish, was so-called my friend, waited for me at the train station. And she said, your parents already packed, you will have to leave your home. So I went home, and sure enough, my parents and my younger brother already packed a little suitcase, and so did I. The next morning, we had to leave our home, and we were not even out from the house when the neighbors came in, and whatever they wanted to take out from the house, that's it. So we were taken to an apartment building which was owned by a Jewish doctor. And for instance, my mother, my brother, and 8 other people, we had one bedroom for ourselves. My father at that point wasn't with us because they took these Jewish men who were working for the coal mine, and they put them in a house which once upon a time was owned by a Jewish young doctor, and he found out what the future will be, and he took his family to a forest, his wife and 2 little children, and took their life and his own life. So now they collected the Jewish men whom they wanted to stay with the coal mine, and they had to live there. So my father would come late afternoon to visit us and had to go back again. My sister stayed in Budapest and still with the Jewish orphanage. So slowly, I just didn't feel safe to go anymore to Budapest and back again. So one morning, they said they will take the Hungarian women and teenage girls to the main street of my city, my town, I should say, and we had to go on our hands and knees and scrub the ground of the main street. We had the buckets and brush. It was a terrible hot weather. But I have to say, we didn't have cars practically, 1 or 2 cars, that's it. And there were horse and buggies. And we had to scrub the ground, which you can be sure was swept but not scrubbed. And on the sidewalk, people were standing, some of them were laughing, some of them couldn't see the sight. Because I have to say that not only the German did the dirty work, but also the Hungarian SS, and they were called the Arrow Cross, and they were just as brutal as a bad SS. So, of course, they were the ones who give out some people who were maybe hiding or that were Jewish. Like they brought in this bedroom where we stayed a man. We didn't even know that he was Jewish. He was married to a Gentile woman, and he had children. But they found him anyway, even though he really hid his religion. And so now, after this place, they brought in more Jewish people from all the surrounding. So the place was very small. So they put us in our synagogue and the social hall. And at that point only, we had a blanket to put on the floor, just enough that we could lay down. And again, at that time, I can't even bring up the subject of what a terrible and ugly way of we were handled, and tried to ask for more and more, give you jewelry and give you money. But at that point, we didn't have already anything because we had already gave up everything. They took some Jewish men, business people, and they were beaten because they wanted more money and more jewelry from them. But there was nothing left. So then again, they decided they're going to take us away from my hometown. So we went to the train station, and we got on a train, and they took us away by train about an hour ride. And we arrived in a military fort which was closed down for many, many years. It was filthy dirty. I mean, rats and mice and every kind of bugs. It was a horrible situation. But at that point, there were about 3,000 Jewish people gathered. Of course, again, I had my biggest problem with my mother. I didn't have any food to give her. I couldn't get any kosher food. So one woman said to me, you know what, I'll give you a cup of flour and do something with it. What am I going to do? I mixed the flour with water, and it came, I made like a thick paste. And I made little, what they call patties. And as I told you, that was a military fort which had a huge, huge baking oven, which not electric heated, but coals. And they heated up that oven, and some people, they had something which they could bake in the oven. So I did this patties, and I thought, okay, I'm going to put it in the oven. Well, when I got it, I took it out, it was like a piece of rock. So I gave my mother a glass of water. I said, Mom, just dunk in the water and try to eat it. Something for your system. Well, as the day went by, my mother was weaker and weaker. Then came the big day. They wanted to take us away. So again, we went to the train station, and they put us in a cattle wagon, about 100 and 120 people in one section. It was not even enough room to sit down. But I don't know how. As I was pushed inside, this cattle wagon has a little window on, and on the window some, what they call it, the iron gate. And I looked out the window, and I saw my father standing outside, a little package in his hand. I should really leave out that portion because... So I saw my father, and I yelled out the window, Dad, Dad. And I tried to push myself to go to the entrance, to get down to him. And when he heard my voice, he wanted to come up to see us. And the Hungarian SS stopped him and asked, what is he doing here? And he says, my family is on that train, and I have a small package of food for them. So they said, give me the package, we will give to your family. At that point, they started to beat my father and kicked him, beat him, until I didn't see him anymore. He was out from the station. That was the last time I saw my father. Now, we didn't go. We didn't know where are we going. Around 2 o'clock afternoon, the train started to move. And we went overnight, another day, another night, another day. And meanwhile, you can imagine, people went crazy. An old man who had the daughter and grandchildren died right there. A woman was insane, yelling. There was no place to go to the bathroom. What they did in each four corners, they put a pot, and they said, do it. So finally, and meanwhile, my mother, I didn't know what to do with her. And I still can't understand how one of the women had in her suitcase a piece of ham. And he said, please eat a piece. But my mother, no way she would put something in her mouth which wasn't allowed. So finally, during the night, we arrived and the train stopped. And we thought, oh, thank God, we can get out, and if nothing else, we can get some fresh air. The sun is in my eye. Excuse me, but how are we going to do that?
If we can move, Magda, if we can move just this way, I think that might be enough.
I'm sorry.
Alex, can you go on that side, please, and just lift the table slightly? Ever so slightly.
Get up.
How about we just rotate it and set it in front of those chairs?
Just rotate it there, and then hopefully you want to turn
Okay.
the chairs just a little bit. Is that going to be enough?
No, it's still coming in at eye level. Moving it so that everybody sits in those chairs would probably be the best.
It's just we won't have the...
No, I think it will be fine. Yes.
Okay.
You're shining in my eye. Okay. Okay, that's better. Yeah. So now we were all excited that we are going out from the train. So as we got out, we saw a big chimney, and this black smoke soot came out from the chimney. It had a terrible, terrible smell to it. So some of the people who worked on the side as the train arrived, they were assigned, or that they were longer in Auschwitz. Oh, I forgot to say, we saw the name Auschwitz, but we had absolute no idea what Auschwitz was meant. So they were already for a long time, and they were assigned when a transport arrives, then they have to go on the train and get all the leftover suitcases and sorting, clothing, and whatever, separating. So we were asking, what is that smell? So they said, if tomorrow you're going to smell this, then you know that your mother, father, little brother, little sister being burned. And that's the smell, because it smelled like a burned flesh. But we thought, no, it can't be. There's something, some mean people tried to scare us. Then came the big order, separate the woman and man. Well, they took my brother away, and my mother, again, was devastated, her only son. But nothing we could do. So the men separate, women separate. Now, picture this. There is a young woman holding a baby, holding the hand of a little child. They come over, grab the baby from the mother and the little toddler, and give them to an old woman and send them aside. Where are you taking my child? They said, well, the old ladies will take care of the children, and everybody will go to take a shower, and then you will get the children back. But of course, I don't have to tell you the feeling of a mother whose child was just grabbed away and given to a strange person. But still, we didn't know what will happen now. I was holding on my mother, and the Germans always wanted to have 5 in a row that they can count easier, 5, 10, 15, 20. I'm holding my mother, and we're going ahead. And in the front, there's a podium, and Mengele was standing on the podium, and with one finger, he decided who will live and who will die. So I was holding on my mother, and of course, with his finger, he sent my mother on his left and sent me on his right. So again, I ran after my mother. And they pulled me back. Again, they said, they are going to take a shower, we are going to take a shower, and we will meet again. And I yelled out, Mom, I love you, I see you soon. I have never seen my mother again. Now, we had to go in a big hall, and the order was given, undressed entirely naked, and at that point I just had my handbag with me, and of course my important documents and some pictures, family pictures, everything is already left on the train. So everything nice and neat, put on the floor next to you, and then we will come back and you pick up your clothes and put it on. Well, it was just about impossible that to undress entirely naked in front of men standing there, SS men. And then in Poland, they again had men whom they let out from the jail. They were murderers, they were robbers, they were criminals. And they were let out from the jails and told them, more you will make them suffer, a better life you will have. And of course they did a good job to do that. So then, as we were going ahead, we turned on the left, there were men standing, and they were shared our hair, underarm, and our private. We hardly even recognized each other. Then we had to go again in a room which was ice cold, and stand again 5, 5, 5, and waiting what is the next. As we were standing there, on the side we noticed they had toilets. At that point, forget about the hunger. But we were so thirsty that we ran to the toilet and we bent down in the toilet bowl, and with our hand we took the water and drank the water. Of course, when they noticed that we are drinking water, they came and started to beat us. But again, with that water, of course, it was something in that water. So when we had couple sips, then in our throat, it felt like there's a ball in our throat, and we just couldn't swallow anymore. And that was even when we were in the barracks, the water was the same way. But, if you're thirsty, you're taking chances. So finally, now we are taking a shower. So we went to another room, and from above ceiling, ice cold water came on us. We got all wet again, and again to another room, ice cold room. And we're waiting at that point already, because when we arrived, we figured it must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning. And by that time, all this what happened, we could see already the sun rising. And then suddenly we started to move, and through the windows, little windows, they threw out one-piece dress. That's it. It didn't matter if it was silk or wool or torn or dirty or whatnot. That was your position, and that's it. So of course we tried to exchange. I remember like today, I had a red silk dress. And what was the reason, I don't know. They cut it in the front, so I would pick up the bottom and then hold it up because I had to cover myself. So then finally we went outside. And standing in the line waiting, must have been about at 8 o'clock, and we could finally go and try to find, our friends, and it was crazy, I tell you. Also, so came about 11 o'clock, they decided they're going to give us something to eat. So, of course, when the transports arrived, they had pots and pans and everything. So, about the size of that pot is full with some hot soup. That this pot of soup had to be enough for 10 people. And finally, when it cooled off, that we can drink from that pot, we looked at each other. We didn't know what we are drinking, because it felt like there's sand in that soup. But some of the younger mothers, they said, just let's finish this soup because we need some nourishment. All right, we finished the soup. During the night, we were put in a barrack which had no windows, and I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of women were packed in that barrack. Suddenly, we heard some screaming at the entrance. Well, we couldn't figure out what it was. What happened was some drunk SS and this Polish prisoners, they came in and they started to grab beautiful girls and drag them away. And the screaming echoed, and everybody started to scream because we didn't know what is happening now. So then, of course, we found out in the morning what happened, and Those girls never came back. There was one young woman from my hometown, and she was screaming because they took the baby away from her, and she was still nursing. And she just screamed, "I want my baby, I want my baby." Finally, I said, "Okay, you want your baby?" They took her, of course, gone, never seen again. Now, my life, first in Auschwitz, was 10 days. After 10 days, they decided to take us away from Auschwitz. And I don't know if any of you saw Schindler's List, which they show the selection. The selection was we had to take off that only dress what we had all naked, and we had to run between the SS men and these Polish people. And if somebody couldn't run fast enough, then they said, "Go on the side and we will send you to the doctor." You know, today, a person didn't have to be weak, but skinny. Like today, so many girls skinny. If they were skinny, they were not good enough for work. So they were sent to the doctor, which meant they were never, any of them came back again. So, decided now we are going somewhere else. They put us in a cattle wagons again. We were not crowded like we were going to Auschwitz. And they took us to Krakow, Plaszow. Now, Plaszow was the place where Schindler had the factory. But of course, I didn't know anything about Schindler's factory until I saw the film in Seattle. And you know, as I understand, and I saw with my own eyes, that a lot of people were crying after they came out from that movie. For me, it was sad to see it, but the only time I had tears in my eyes at the end of the movie when Schindler was buried in Israel, in Jerusalem, and when it came the day of the liberation, then all the survivors who lived in Israel and their families, they would go to visit the grave. This really touched me. That made me cry. So now, Krakow. Krakow was the most horrible. That's okay. It's a modern life.
Tell them why, though, about Schindler's List. Tell them why it didn't really move you.
Just come on here. You know I can't hear.
No. About Schindler's List. Tell them why Schindler's List you thought it was.
Why they took Schindler?
No. Yeah, about the movie, though. Tell them why you thought it was.
Would you please come here and talk to me?
Sorry. No, because they don't get the point. Tell them why you didn't think Schindler's List was that moving. You only cried at the end.
Because.
Yeah, no, but tell them, not me. Tell them about why you thought Schindler's List was an okay movie. Because you usually tell that point. Tell them about Schindler's List and about the conditions in the movie.
Yeah, what they saw it.
They saw it. Yeah,
listen,
honey,
don't give me trouble.
No. Tell them about the movie.
Okay.
But tell them why you thought the movie wasn't as good as the way it really was. Because everybody cried when they saw the movie about how bad it was in the movie. Yeah. But it wasn't that bad. You know what I'm saying?
No. Yeah, I understand now. Okay, sweetheart, sit down. No, he wants me to explain why I felt, that people were crying to see that movie, Schindler's List. As I always say, I have seen a lot of movies and stories reading, but that was the only movie which really, really was the closest to the truth and showed a lot of horrors and how we were beaten to go on the train and I mean, that was something unusual film. But because I went through and I couldn't cry during the movie, but I cried when I saw they go to visit Schindler's grave. That's really touched me. It's okay.
It was close.
You want to talk about it? Come on, talk about it.
Well, no, the story she tells is because when, as we continuously hear, is during the movie, she said it was close, but it was nothing like it, because when she actually saw the movie, she said it was close, but it was like a quarter of the way. A couple times during the movie, she actually laughed like, I wished it was that good. I wished it was that easy. I wish they were only that bad. She said, because as hard as they tried to portray the horrors of the situation, she said, I wished it was that easy. I wish we could have lived it as easily as they portrayed it in the movie. And the reason, that's a reason she said, I wasn't able to cry during the movie, because as hard as they tried to portray it as an evil time, of course, as it was, but they really weren't able to capture the true horror of the time. And so that's really what I was trying to, because that's usually what she tells us. So there you go.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'm going to learn from him. Okay, sweetheart. Now, in Krakow, it was a terrible, terrible life. We had to work. What kind of work did we do? They took us out in the morning and went to a little hill. And they said that hill has to be leveled. The top has to be leveled. So we got the picks, shovels, and wheelbarrows. So we went up on the hill, loosened the dirt, put it in the wheelbarrow, and we had to push the dirt down the hill, empty it, and then go up again with the empty wheelbarrow. What did we do the next day? Down the hill, at the bottom of the hill, we had to fill up the wheelbarrow, push up the hill, the dirt, and it was very, very difficult work, especially that. So in Krakow, they also were prisoners who were called political prisoners. They were the ones who did not go along with Hitler's ideas. And at that time, it was very dangerous even to trust your own brother or sister. Because if somebody said, well, my brother said something against Hitler, then they came and they arrested the brother. So it was very, very difficult. So a lot of them were arrested because of that, and they were called political prisoners. So when we were assigned in the morning in groups to go to work, different places, I remember our group had approximately 30 women, and our foreman was a pharmacist who was a political prisoner. And he really felt sorry for us. So he said, when you come up the hill or you go down the hill and you look around and you see that the coast is clear, why don't you just stop and not to sit down, just stop and relax. Okay. So we always try to keep together from my hometown, the girls. So each of us pushing the wheelbarrow, and we looked around, everything was okay. So we stopped. And suddenly, on the opposite side, behind a fence, now that was not electric fence like in Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, they had electric fence, and the fence was so strong electric that if somebody stayed that far away, the electricity pulled them, and immediately they were electrocuted. But over there, it was just a fence. But now, suddenly we noticed there's an SS officer with the German Shepherd on his side, on the other side of the fence. And he yelled out something. So the other three girls, they had much more German language knowledge than I had, because the only thing I could speak German, what I learned in high school. So they each showed at themselves, and he says, no. Finally, I pointed at myself. He said, yes. I had to go to the fence. And he was saying something to me, and I didn't understand a word what he said. But I started to say in German, I will work hard, I will be diligent, I'm sorry, I don't understand German, and I repeat, and he repeats the same words again. And then I understood who is my foreman, and I said, I don't know. I would not dare to give out his name. So he called over another foreman, and he said, I don't belong to his group, which was true, but the officer told him to take me to the gate. So we walked to the gate, and he waited for us, and the first thing what he did, he gave a slap on this guy's face. And then again, he repeats the same word, and I repeat my same word. At that point, he started to beat me. I tell you, with his fist in my face, with his boots in my stomach. I'm trying to keep my hand on my stomach. I got it in my face. And the dog next to him is already just waiting for the command to attack me. And I wished at that point that the dog would attack me already. And I was bleeding already. My mouth was bleeding. My eye was already blurred. And I didn't know what to do. So one of the Hungarian girl, who was working on the side, and she understood the German, and she took the chance to come over to him and said, this girl does not understand German. May I help her? And he looks at her, and he says, ask her, why did she smile? And I looked up again, and he says, look, she's smiling again. I can tell you, as of today, I really didn't have a reason to smile. I don't know what he saw on my face. But finally, he let me go. But because this guy got that little slap on the face, he says, I'm gonna make your life hell. And sure he did. Every single morning, when I was in another group, he would take me out. And he gave me to do the job for 4 people. But I thought, what am I to lose? if you're going to beat me and I die. If I die from suffering, that I gave up already. So one day he called over a girl and told her to tell me he wanted to meet me behind the barrack at night. And I said my answer was definitely no. And every day, 3 days, more I said no, more difficult was my life. But I survived. In Krakow, when we heard on the loudspeaker, the Blue Danube song was played, then we knew, very loud, we knew there is killing going on, shooting. And the reason they made that so loud, that we shouldn't hear the cry and the scream of the people. Unfortunately, I was in Krakow for 6 weeks. And then the Russian military get closer to Krakow, so they decided to empty the Krakow camp and not to show the Russian to see what's happening. So where did we go? Back to Auschwitz. When we arrived to Auschwitz, it was a very, very hard day. We stood in the line, and that was the day when I got the tattoo on my arm. My number is very small because at that point already the Germans knew that they are losing the war. My husband, rest in peace, was from Greece, and he was for 2.5 years in Auschwitz and Dachau. Well, their number was large. So anyway, again, we were in Auschwitz for 4 weeks. Every second day, as I said, the selection. Then we went out to a field, and we had to pick grass and put the grass, pick with hand, put the grass in a wheelbarrow. And we thought probably we were picking the grass to feed the animals. But we had to take the wheelbarrow with the grass to the kitchen. Empty the kitchen, the grass. This grass what we picked, they made a soup out of it, and they put it in a boiling water. And this is what when we arrived first, and all the time, this was the soup what we got. And one day they put a lot of salt in it, the other day no salt in it. But then the bread, we had just a very, very small portion bread 3 times a week. So finally my lucky star came, and they needed 500 Hungarian women in Germany to go to work in a factory. And luckily, I was among the 500. So they put us in, then at that point we got already now a gray long dress. And we got to Germany in Bavaria, and we were taken to the factory. And we lived inside the factory, and at first floor, the second floor, we worked on the second floor, and the third floor was for the German civilians, did the same work as we did on the second floor. Well, we really felt that we are in heaven. each of us, we got a ceramic bowl for soup and a spoon. And at the beginning, we got good soup, edible food, and a little more bread, until that SS officer who was in charge of us, there were 500 women, was called to Dachau because the factory was a branch of Dachau. And he had to go for a meeting, and when he came back from the meeting, it was changed everything. The food was horrible. The bread, we got half of amount. And now, I still can't realize how we slept on a bunk bed and we had a straw mattress. And I still don't understand how we got bedbugs and lice. And we really tried to keep ourselves clean every Sunday. Sundays we didn't work. They would take us downstairs and take a shower. During the night, we would had a way of doing that. We were not supposed to go out at night from our room, but we sneak out and we washed ourselves and we came back. We woke up. The next one wanted to go. The third one was watching the L-shaped corner, make sure that the SS woman and SS men won't heard the water falling, and then give an order to hide again. So anyway, we really tried so hard, and we took up that between 500 women, there were all kinds of profession: beautician, dressmaker. There was one girl who was doing beautiful things from nothing, And anyway, so one girl from my hometown was a beautician and another a dressmaker. So what we did, we cut off the bottom, about that piece from the dress, and she made for me a bra and underpants. So the girl on Sunday afternoon styled my hair because, started to grow out again. So, but then when we went Monday morning to work and the SS woman saw that we are halfway decent, it was forbidden to do it. But anyway, now we came at the place of the factory was Augsburg. Suddenly one day, a very high officer, but not an SS officer, but a Wehrmacht officer would come, and he, we thought that God sent him. He was so good to us. When he would come in the factory, or the SS, when he came in, we didn't know how fast our hand should work, that make sure that he's happy that we work. He came in, this officer, he says, just take it easy, no rush, no rush. Didn't realize he was a very smart man. He knew that the Germans are losing the war, and he wanted to be a good one, and he was a good one. So then when already it was end of March, they decided they don't need us anymore in the factory and they will take us away someplace else. And this Wehrmacht officer stood up on a chair and he was telling us, if you have to die, I will die with you. If you will be liberated, I will be liberated with you. And he, came with us, and they took us again to another camp, concentration camp. And when we arrived, on the opposite side of the fence, there were Hungarian men looking like just skin and bone and dirty. And the first thing, I ran to the fence and I asked my brother's name and my father's name. And thank God they were not among. And so we were there for about 3 weeks, and they put us again in a wagon. And they were, later on, we found out the order was to take us in a forest and dig a ditch and to be shot and to just fall in that ditch. But this Wehrmacht officer arranged that the train was going back and forth until May 1st we were liberated. So now I'm going to give you just a couple, I'm going to read for the kids this, but my father, when in Hungary the communist Russian came to liberate Hungary, they decided to take out the rest of the men. Well, now I'm talking about my hometown. And this man whom I mentioned before, whose wife was a Gentile, was among them to be taken away. And after the liberation, my sister, who survived, it's also another story, went to see him. And he was saying that my father was so excited to leave Hungary, and he is going to be with the family. Because when a lot of people, when we arrived in Auschwitz, they got a postcard. And I remember I was so upset because I didn't get any. But evidently my brother did got one, and it was already printed. Only thing, we are doing well, and we are with mom and dad, or something like that, and just sign your name. So my brother sent one back to my father, who was left behind. So my father thought, now he's coming to be with the family. And when he arrived to Buchenwald, and he saw what happening, this man said, he came back to his wife. The man said to my sister that my father was so upset. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, he wouldn't be able to work. And he says, quote unquote, our father died of a broken heart. So, even then, after some people went back to Hungary. In Hungary, in 1941, there were 850,000 Jews. In 1944, returned 116,000, and about 750,000 were murdered. And still the Hungarians said more Jews came back than they ever been before. My husband was from Salonika, Greece, and Salonika was known that they called small Palestine, that time Israel called Palestine, because there were so many Jewish people lived in Salonika. In Salonika before this war was 65,000 and murdered 62,000. And the Greek women especially did not survive because they came from a warm country, and when they came to Auschwitz and the winter came, they couldn't survive. And so after the liberation, some of the Greek Jews who were strong enough to stay alive, they married Hungarian women, Polish women, So my husband was from Salonika, and the first he saw me and he fell in love with me. And we didn't even speak the language. My husband spoke 5 languages. I spoke only Hungarian, a little bit German. And after 6 weeks, we got married. We didn't even know the language. And of course, with the time, we spoke first German with each other. So now I have to read for the kids. And this, I tried to translate from Hungarian language in English because I found a book which was written by Hungarian people who stayed behind in Budapest when I had no idea what was going on, what happened after they took us away. But this story, I thought, for children, when I go, would be really a little sad, but I have to read it to you. The Hungarian SS called the Arrow Cross, dragged down to a basement of an apartment building where were mainly Jewish women. Suddenly they pushed a boy about 13 years old through the door. He had a small bag in his hand. He pleaded, "Please, do not hurt me. I wanted to go to my grandmother. Please, I'm not a Jew." "Oh, you're not a Jew?" "No," said the boy quietly. "Well, show me your bag." They opened the bag. There was 2 towels, a pillowcase, a shirt, a blouse. Suddenly a small prayer book fell out of the pillowcase. The child started to shake and cry. He grabbed the man's hand and started to kiss it. "Please, don't hurt me. Why did you deny that you are a Jew?" And he took a rubber hose and started to beat the boy. He screamed, and the man hit him again. He almost collapsed when the other SS caught him and said, "For God's sakes, do not hurt the child." But the SS continued and beat the boy, and the boy cried, "Mother, mother." Again the other SS begged to give him the boy, stop beating him. He put his hands together, he knelt down and prayed, "Christ, I believe in you. Please help save this child." The one SS said to the child, "If he says a Jewish prayer, then we let you go." At that point, the blood came from his mouth, nose, but he had hope, and with his swollen lips, slowly started to recite the blessing. So now he can die. He said a prayer. And with this, they gave him more blow with the rubber hose, and the boy fell down, closed his eyes, and died. They ordered a man who wanted to save the boy to take the dead boy to the back room where there were more tortured dead Jews. After the man came back, they said to him, "Well, now it will be your turn. Are you Christian?" Until now I was, but at that point 4 SS started to beat him with the rubber hose. Suddenly the one stopped and said, "Let him say the prayer also." He picked up the little prayer book and from the floor and recited the same prayer as the boy. He said he wanted to be together with his ancestors. They beat him to death also. Well, I found out there were Jewish men who had a chance to get the uniform, the Hungarian SS uniform they put on, and they tried to save this way some Jewish people. So also after the liberation, there were some people, girls who went back to Hungary, they went back, the old country. The one woman came back, and he was telling us that, she was not taken away, that's what I have to say. And she was telling us what she went through, what she had seen in Hungary, in Budapest. She was telling us that they took some mothers with children and they put them in an apartment building, collected them, and they decided now they are together, the children, mothers, and we will take them away. Some of the mothers, they said, you know what, we're going to leave the babies behind. And hopefully somebody will come, find the baby, will take home the baby, and give them a chance to live. Well, when this Hungarian SS and the German SS went inside that building, and they found the babies, it's a horrible thing to say. She said, they just tore the babies in half and they would throw them out the window. Or they would take the babies on the street and they would throw the baby in the air and they were shooting to see who's the best shooter. And you know, I was reading that book, what was written in Hungarian, and I just couldn't. They took people to the Danube, they shot them, and they said the water of the Danube River turned red from the blood. And anyway, also I have to read you something. In April 25th, 1984, we had a beautiful Holocaust memorial services in Olympia. And we had a survivor, a liberator. So the liberator, this is the one here. And this is also, this liberator said the following. Let's see. In one of the vehicles, American soldier Charles Ellington thought about the approaching end of the war and listened idly to the chatter from the observation plane that was flying ahead. The pilot, Ellington said, reported a factory on the crest of a hill not far ahead. Are you sure it's a factory? The pilot was asked. Sure. The pilot said, I can see the smokestacks pouring out smoke, and I can see the large pile of cordwood lying against the fence. It was a factory, Ellington was recalling yesterday, a factory of death. As one of the first Americans to arrive in Mauthausen, an extermination camp near Linz, Ellington was to see human beings so weak from malnutrition and mistreatment they died while attempting to eat food given them by the soldiers. Outside the stacked like cordwood along the fence were row upon row of human bodies, naked, dead, awaiting for cremation. Those ovens, said Ellington, were still warm when Patton's men arrived, and the smoke which had been seen was the smoke of human ashes, rising a wispy monument to a verse that human nature in partnership with the efficiency of an immoral government could yet devise. Although Ellington was to see many things in his tour of duty in Europe, a tour which included crossing the Rhine and observing the Nuremberg wartime crimes trials, nothing would ever surpass the sight of Mauthausen. Now this is from a liberator. This is my husband is with that liberator. Then we had another liberator, and this was in the newspaper, my husband and I. So, and I have a picture here. Spielberg was in Seattle about 6 or 7 years ago, and we have a picture taken with him and with another lady who's also a survivor. Okay, I think now I will give you a chance, and you have to come here and you have to repeat.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm the interpreter in case you have questions.
Yeah, and you talk clear.
I will, yes,
Now
ma'am.
take a chair, sit down.
They want to see the picture.
Well, yeah.
They want to pass this.
Yes. Before we start that, I have to say, after we came to United States, we were sponsored by the Jewish Family Service. And of course, I came with my husband and my older son and my daughter. And then another son was born in Seattle. And he's married to my older son's older daughter. So he has 3 daughters. My daughter has a boy and a girl. And my younger son has 1 boy. Then he came along. And then my grandson married also, so I got another granddaughter. So this is, and it's, it was very, very interesting when my first great-granddaughter was born about 6 months ago. We came here, and the American Jews told us, forget about what happened. You start a new life. Don't even think about Holocaust. Well, we didn't think about the Holocaust until the movement started with the skinheads, with the Arrow Cross or whatever. Then we said, wait a second, we are still here. Let's get together. And we organized a Holocaust survivor group. And then we decided to go to different schools, organizations, and talk about the Holocaust. And but unfortunately, not too many we have survived. Now, but I didn't even realize when I had my own children. I didn't even realize when I had my grandchildren. But when my great-grandchild was born, I said, oh my gosh, am I ever a lucky person? Because, first when we were liberated, we felt guilty that we are alive and our family is gone. But this little girl made me realize how lucky I am that I have such a wonderful children, grandchildren, and now 2. They just had a little girl also 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks on Tuesday.
Yeah. So 2 great-granddaughters. And I tell you, he is such a wonderful grandson, husband, and a wonderful father.
I'll be signing autographs at the end. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love you too.
Yes. No, you have to repeat the
I
question.
will. I promise. And that is.
Do you mind telling us what year you were born?
He wants to know what year you were born.
1922. I am 82 years old. Right?
Yep. Yeah, that's right. I can't add that high. Huh?
Yes. Yes.
I was told that in the Holocaust, some women had full clothes of the dead men or something like that.
He was told that during the Holocaust that the women were forced to fold the clothes of the dead men. Is that true?
Yes. Also, when I went on a vacation and I met a gentleman who was a dentist, and he was telling that when the transport arrived and he said, well, of course, what condition we were, no toilet, no. His job was, because he was already a young dentist, and he had to take out from the dead bodies the gold tooth and collected the gold. And then, of course, the Germans took it and whatever, they melted down and they made jewelry out of it. Yes, and of course, when the transport arrived and they found beautiful clothing, like myself, when the Germans came in, it was just before Passover, and I had a beautiful piece of material to make a dress for the holiday. Well, this neighbor girl, who was a dressmaker had the material. Well, when it came the time that they took us in the ghetto, I went back and I begged her to give me back the material. And she gave me back finally the material, and I put it in a suitcase in case it comes a time to exchange for food. So if they found things like that, and sometimes probably they even found hidden jewelry, so they were, yes.
Did you have anybody that's still alive from your family?
Do you have anybody that's still alive from your family?
Well, I had a sister. Unfortunately, she had a story to tell how she saved the children from the orphanage. It is something like you saw in The Sound of Music, how they gave the children something, little ones, not to cry, and then the older ones were carrying them. And then she came to Canada in 1970, but unfortunately I lost her 3.5 years ago. And my brother died. So then unfortunately, I lost my husband 10 years ago also.
She's the last.
Yeah.
Over here, huh?
You mentioned that your mother was very observant. When you were in the concentration camps, what was your relationship with God?
She asked that your mother was very observant,
Yes.
very religious.
Yes.
What was your relationship to God while you were in the camps?
It's very interesting. Thank you for asking that. Because I did not lose my faith, because I said every night and every morning my prayer. And of course, there was a big, big disagreement between all these prisoners, because the one side said, we are in the concentration camp because we did not assimilate it. The other one, no, we are in the concentration camp because we were not good Jews. And when we were liberated, I still said I'm Jewish. And luckily, my husband had the same feeling. And when we were liberated, we had a synagogue in Germany after the liberation. And when we came to United States, the very first thing, my husband went to find a Jewish synagogue. And maybe that helped. But why I was liberated? Well, my sister was also liberated, but uncles, aunts, all were murdered.
Yeah.
What year was the concentration camp that you were in liberated?
What year were you? What year was the camp you were in liberated?
What year?
Yeah. What year were you liberated?
In 1945, because we were liberated in 1945, May 1st. But as I said, the Hungarian Jews were the last one to be taken in the concentration camp. Like, the Polish Jews, they were for 3 years, 4 years. My husband was for 2.5 years from Greece. Yeah.
How old were you when you were taken?
I figured out in 1920, 22 years old.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you coped with your fear every day when you were in the camp.
She wants to know over there how you coped with your fear every day of being in the camps. No, back then. How did you cope with being in the camp every day about being afraid?
There was absolutely nothing what we could do. We just, what will be, will be. We couldn't escape. Whatever that they told us we had to do, we did. If we couldn't do it, I tell you, as I said, in Krakow was the most horrible for us, because they would take us out to work, and some people were so weak already, they couldn't even walk. Or, excuse me, there was very common to have diarrhea, and if that happens, immediately they were shot at that place. It wasn't nothing uncommon to see a dead person, a person being shot in front of your eye. And you couldn't do nothing. There was brothers, mothers, and daughters, and nothing. You couldn't do nothing about it. If you wanted to stop, you would be shot. And it happened that somebody wouldn't leave the mother, they were shot. That's...
Yeah.
You said that there were groups of people who gathered from survivors of the Holocaust. What did you guys talk about? What did you guys discuss?
So the question is, what do the groups of survivors talk about? Do they gather now, and what do they talk about? The question is, do the groups of survivors gather now, and what do you talk about? Do you?
Well, as I said, there's not too many survivors in the Seattle area, but we don't talk about it. If we go out like this, then we talk about it. But now we have to talk about our family, our life, our future, and our health, That's what the subject is now. Yes.
So how are you exactly liberated exactly?
How are you liberated?
We were in the cattle wagon. And this officer was with us, and at one point the train was stopped at the train station, and some Germans yelled out, "You are free, the war is over." So they tried to open from inside the door, and we got out of the train, of the wagon, and I remember we wanted to find from hometown, the people who were in that group. And as the people got off this train and they tried to run away, and the other side of the station, they were waiting already and they were shot. But that was a false alarm. So this officer said, "You go back in the train, and when I will tell you that you are liberated, then you will be." So it was early in the morning, and suddenly somebody yelled out, "The American army is here, the American army is here." We saw the tanks, the big trucks, and they got off the trucks, and then some of us, we ran, and then they gave us cigarettes and chewing gum and candy, and then finally we knew that we were liberated.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how you have dealt with what I can only imagine would be so much anger over this happening to your family, and
She wants to know how you've managed to deal with all the anger that you've had about what essentially the Germans have done to your family.
Well, when we came here, especially after we had our children, we had horrible, horrible dreams. And when we cried out in our dream, and I remember my husband would shake me and kiss me, just to get out of it. And we went to Germany. Unfortunately, my brother had a brother who survived with him. And after the liberation, in 1945, he was killed in an accident. And he was buried in Germany. So we came to the United States to go to see his grave. And then we went, to Israel. And you can't believe that I really. And we were busy to raise the family. The survivors, when we arrived here, we were like a big family. And practically all of us had about the same children. So the kids would get together, grown-ups get together, and with the time, it wasn't for us to start in the United States. And my friend injured the leg in that accident where his brother died. And when we came to the United States, he